right now, I mean, the whole controversy during this COVID-19 crisis or opportunity or whatever you want to call it, is that data is becoming more important than oil, more than important than any other extractive, let's say data is also an extractive industry. You know, you're extracting everything from people and you're putting it into a kind of a Western view soup, because it's mixed all together, but it's not mixed in the right way. We know you can't do facial recognition in China the same way you can do in the West. Who knows what will happen with these new apps that will, you know, make us be able to be free out of our houses, working, etc., and the whole structure of that. And I think this was a conversation we were having about the soup, this kind of soup, but also who selects out of the soup, and who is in charge of the soup. You know,
it's so like the recipe.
Yeah, exactly. It's like who's making this recipe, guys? You know,
the perfect soup.
You know, I'm really curious to know about the other side of your work, which is kind of like looking at all the people who are going to guide us through and rebuild this kind of a global view of what is good, what is bad, what we should do. Maya sent us a comment yesterday. Who's the shrink? Who's going to help us think about this kind of, it might be a psychiatric experience that we'll need to think about our protection, what is protection for me? What is protection for someone who's Chinese? These are ideas. Are you thinking about this with your clients, in your own work, in your own practice?
Yes, definitely. I love the way you frame it, like soup. I'm used to say that for the past 10 years, like everyone was kind of obsessed with digital technologies, and obviously data was the core goal, right? Like the new gold rush was about data. You're definitely right. What's terrible, what I experience in my professional life, is that in most cases, what you see is that companies, even states, basically tried, as you exactly said, to extract as many data as they could from any possible activity, but they don't know why. Because you had this big data moment, right? Like 6 years ago. And then you had the AI moment, in which we understood that data was only a fuel to something else that would be intelligence. Data for data is an Excel sheet. We don't care. We need the intelligence, we need the mind to basically create something, a perspective out of this tremendous amount of information, right? And actually transfer information into knowledge. What's terrible is that for the past few years, I've seen a lot of my clients actually telling me, this is all the data that we have. What can we do? And that's terrible. Like, this is the most tech pushy thing that you can imagine. Like, because everyone is saying the future is AI, the future is data, because you need to become a platform, you need to become customer-centric to understand your customer better than they know themselves. And so they just want to build something, but they don't know what. So my perspective to it is the opposite. It is to try and see what are the real problems today, and to build these problems, where can AI be efficient? In many cases, it cannot yet. And when it can, where is the data? Sometimes it's open access, but most of the time those data lake are data garbage, meaning like it's terrible to basically clean them. You spend 99% of your work cleaning the data sets, etc. And most of the time you have to find and negotiate with the people to open up the data. Hence the AI Commons, because the overall purpose is that we build licenses, just as the Creative Commons, for people to be able, and companies, entities, governments, etc., to open up data with a specification and low specification, so that they know where the data shall be used for, and we focus on the common good, on the 17 SDGs. But what's really interesting in what you just said, Maria, is that it brings me back to, and I'll finish on this question with that, I guess, is that it brings me back to a frustration I have most of the time with some of my clients, not all of them definitely, but what we help do with them is to help basically solve a big challenge based on what they own as assets, knowledge, understanding of the world, but also physical assets sometimes, because we do believe that in the 10-year emergency that we are living in, we need to help any entity try and be part of the big game solution. The problem is that most of the time when we are doing it, we have a run of methodologies. And at some point we ask the CEOs, what problem do you want to solve? What is the big challenge? What is the mission that you want to onboard? And the question I'm being asked most of the time is, you're talking about a big problem for me or for the world? And this is really interesting. For instance, we have a methodology that is called the pre-mortem, and it's about imagining the death of the company or the state or whatever, you name it. Same, we have a workshop on utopian views. And each time we focus, and the workshop, the people within the company, whatever entity, will focus on the dystopia or the utopia for their own company, disconnected completely from society with a big S. And to me, this is really, really crazy, the way that we disconnected, in the end, the business world from the real world, and that we have to make them understand that they will die when the world dies. Meaning like the exact interconnectedness of the fact that the biggest challenges that we have today are the biggest opportunities to try and approach and solve them. We will not solve everything, definitely, but try and learn to live with it. So to me, it brings back to this problem.
With Mustafa, we've been having conversations about what could be this big game solution. What do you mean by that? This is kind of freaky.
Yeah, so it's funny, you mentioned the Olympics at the beginning of the conversation, and I'm kind of obsessed with the idea that we are living our life as a game. But we have just not discovered the right gameplay, the right rules of the game so far. And this is something that is a bit of an obsession to me. So we started a project called the World Game that is actually a tribute to a lot of amazing thinkers. But in the end, what we're trying to say is that if we want to actually solve part of the problems or learn to live with them, we need to change our perspective, right? And it's not just about imagining something new, it's about playing those fictions. And what we are trying to do with this idea of a world game is really to reconnect the part of fictions that we love to escape reality, planning, entertaining, etc., with real life problems. So I'm giving you an example of this kind of impact game, if you may. In 2013, you have a lab in the US that built a game called Fold It. And the purpose of Fold It was actually to help a research lab to better fold proteins to understand better diseases. And what they've done in the past few months is that they transformed this game that was won by an assistant of a dentist in Liverpool, not by anyone in the lab, because 50,000 people played the game 5 to 7 years ago. And now they want to apply it to the coronavirus. Meaning, how can I play reality in a way? Not just trying to solve it with specific knowledge and specific language, but how can we, and this is a purpose that we have with this initiative, the World Game, how can we abstract some of the problems that we live in today in order not to try and solve them brutally, but play them? The reason for it is that when you play, you actually engage in a specific kind of motivation that you cannot find anywhere else. And it's not just about gamifying work or anything. It's about finding new sets of tools for problem solving. And we think game could be definitely part of it. The reason for it also is that I think in the end, we are all playing a game that we don't really understand. Yeah. And the purpose here might be to find those typical rules.